The following video is one in a series on spiritual resilience training, a non-religious view of personal values and their dynamics with others. The contents reflect a variety of principles and practices of systems theory in relational counseling for team building and family resilience. Although the series is intended to support Army Corps values, each video also encourages the viewer to reflect on their current prominent values in specific situations and to consider what values may be more appropriate to means and results that are honorable and helpful with others. Chaplain Dillard initiates creating and posting these videos. Their contents and YouTube's linked videos do not necessarily reflect specific beliefs, practices, requirements, or endorsements of the Department of Defense, its subordinate organizations, or other groups with which Chaplain Dillard is affiliated.
Welcome back. If you saw the video last week, you know that we looked at some specific techniques of observations, reflections, and connections, and those are interrelated. They're standards for most counselors. I use them all the time myself. But what if you come into a conversation with someone who's come to you and they're so stressed that they are just tunnel visioned on the problem and that's all they can see, or they're very scatterbrained, thinking not that they're a scatterbrained person, but that their thinking is just everywhere. This problem, that concern, that stress, and this worked one time, and this just happened, and their focus is not anywhere. How do you help somebody like that take their focus and put it on something positive that can help them to move forward in their action, help them to go deeper into their insight? Two things you can use are metaphors and memories. And this is why these are so powerful. A metaphor or a memory can be a non sequitur, especially to a person under stress, can be a non sequitur that reveals part of their goal that they haven't really thought about, or a deeper insight that they're having difficulty articulating. I'll give you an example. Let's say somebody comes to you and they're having a hard time in their marriage, their communications, and everything they have to say is all about anger, it's all about confusion or fear or whatever, and they have what seems to be a random statement about a joke somebody made at a meeting they had earlier that day, or something that happened in the food court that brought a positive tear to their eye, or they just came back from a baseball game and they have something really uplifting to say about baseball, even though most of your conversation is about how fearful they are about their marriage. That's going to seem like a non sequitur. It's random, it doesn't quite fit. But in that brief instance, they broke out of their fear or their anger or their depression to say something that was different. That non sequitur is often a reflection of part of the internal conflict, because many times when we are under severe stress, our subconscious will offer a specific point of positive relief to help us to gain insight into some hopeful things in our lives. And they can be often in the forms of positive memories or positive metaphors. A positive memory is generally about a person and that relationship went well. A positive metaphor is about something that is proven. And it can be any number of things. A memory can be about mom, a coach, their first mentor. A positive metaphor can be about the mountains, baseball, any number of things, inanimate and action, but something that is positive to them. They need to offer it at their own free will. It needs to come from them naturally, not something that you offer, not something you drag out of them. It needs to just bubble up from them, so it's part of the internal conflict that's really happening within them. There are several reasons that memories, positive memories and positive metaphors work for us. One is it takes our focus off of our present anxiety and it shifts it to a positive memory or a positive metaphor, so that we're no longer thinking about the problem strictly, but we're thinking about things that are related, but it's been a positive relationship or a proven method or a proven symbol in their life. Memories and metaphors can also literally help us to kind of see, visualize multidimensionally relationships, principles, and methods as they think back about their relationship with their grandmother, as they visualize what it's like for them to play football, or whatever the metaphor is that they have offered or that they mentioned in the conversation. And they're thinking three-dimensionally. They're no longer one-dimensional on the problem, but they're thinking about the people who are involved. They're thinking about what has worked for them, what they enjoyed. They're thinking about the process. They're thinking about things that are true and good. The world has just opened up for them, and you're going to use that in a little bit to help them think about their current concern and some current possible solutions. Metaphors and memories can also help us, or help the other person, to say some specific steps toward those goals. What the goal is, what the obstacle is, how to get there. Because as they visualize, you've heard the old saying, a picture is worth 1,000 words. Now that they have the picture, they can begin to put words to, wow, I didn't realize that what I'm really wanting in this relationship is I'm wanting more closeness at the heart level, or I'm wanting a greater sense of voice in this relationship, that I'm heard, or I'm wanting a sense of progress, that we're moving in a direction that both of us want to go. I didn't realize that that is really my heart's desire. Or I'm realizing that the obstacle that I'm coming up against is I'm just not saying what's on my mind, or I'm being more passive, and I've not done anything. I've thought about it, I've talked about it, I've not taken any action to be helpful in our marriage. And maybe some of that is because of, and then you can go from there. Another way that positive metaphors and memories can be helpful is that they can energize or motivate us forward, because they're founded on or based on a positive memory of a relationship, or a positive metaphor where truths and values and processes have been proven to them in their past successes. Now let's look at some very specific statements or questions that you can use in a metaphor or a memory. Let's say, even though they're talking to you about their spouse, that somewhere in that conversation they mention their grandfather, and they smile, or they turn away for a moment, and it's a tear, but it's a tear of sadness, or you sense in their body some relief. You can simply say, tell me more about your grandfather, or their mom, or their coach, or first mentor, or whoever it was. And just let them open up, and as they talk, you could say what was most special about him for you. Make it very personal about their relationship, because even though the presenting problem they brought to you is about their spouse, help them get out of that box of stress and narrow tunnel vision or scattered thinking, and to free them to talk about their grandfather, because that's going to reveal things that they valued, ways that they respected each other or cared for each other, things that they did for each other, or things they received from each other in terms of trust and commitment, communication. And then you can take that back and ask them about the relationship with their spouse. You could follow up with a question, what if he was here right now? What might he say to you? And then just be quiet and listen. Again, you're looking to help them deepen their insight into what it is that they really value about relationships, what it is that they believe works or has worked for them in the past. So it's deeper insight for them about their goals, about their perception of the problem, and about some possible ways to move forward. Just to make sure that we're keeping it focused on action and not just insight, you can also say, what might he tell you to do if he were here today? Not simply what might he say, but what might he tell you to do? And that will take them from insight, which is very important, and to move them toward action, because remember, we want self-awareness and self-management. Now we want to make sure that whatever they say about that memory of their grandfather is actually something they can use. It's some good advice, so you could offer a follow-up question. What part of that could realistically be helpful to you right now? So you're taking whatever that person has said to you about their relationship with the grandfather, and you're helping them to focus even more, so that it's practical. They can implement it in their current relationship with their spouse. All right, for a metaphor, let's say they've come to you and they're, again, talking about difficulty with their spouse. But at some point in the conversation, possibly early on, and I should mention this, it's often early on when they first walk in the door because they're very stressed and they're nervous about talking to somebody about their problem, or it's just a few minutes before they know they're about to leave that they'll mention this because subconsciously they're not sure they want to talk more about it. Because sometimes we want to revel in our problems and we know that they're in that metaphor or in that memory there are some positive possibilities, but we're not ready to go there because change in itself is stressful. So they can mention it early on or at the very last minute. Listen for those two times. But let's say that they mention something like, I'm really looking forward to this softball game or baseball game we're having with my community league, and it'll be time away from my spouse, or I won't have to worry about arguing or whatever. That's going to seem like a non sequitur, and it could get you off track if you let it. But if it's a positive metaphor that they have offered and has some hope in their life, you can use it. And you can simply say something like, there's nothing quite like baseball. Make sure you have a slight smile on your face that resonates with them, that you agree baseball is a positive thing, and just be quiet. If they don't say more, ask them, tell me what you enjoy about baseball. Again, it's going to be something that even at a subconscious level is part of the conflict they feel. There's a negative they're experiencing in the marriage compared to a positive that they experience in baseball or hiking in the mountains or the ocean or whatever this impersonal thing or activity is, their truck, what have you. Tell me about that and let them talk. After they've talked a little bit, you could say something like, I wonder if part of your concern about your marriage is a little like baseball? And you could put it in the form of a question like that. And again, let them talk a little bit. They might even say, well, what do you mean? Well, baseball's about relationships, it's about teamwork, it's about communication. What do you like about baseball? Or if your life right now was a baseball game, what position would you be playing? To make sure that we keep them open-minded and positively focused on the metaphor, stay specific, stay focused on baseball, don't talk too much about the marriage, the original problem they presented. And you could say, well, what position would you be playing right now and how would you play it? What would need to be your move in the baseball game? Visualize yourself on that plate or in that part of the field or whatever your part is. What would you need to do right now to have a good game? And this gets their creative juices going. And they might say several things about methods, about teamwork, about positive communications, but let them talk. You don't do any talking or much talking at all except to facilitate their thinking about baseball. Now, if they're saying a ton of things, again, you could narrow it down by saying, if you were to tell somebody about baseball, how would you boil it down to one or two essential things about an effective game? And let them say what it is, and then ask them, how might that apply to your communications with your spouse? So they've taken those creative juices, you've literally taken them out of the box, they're thinking out of the box of the problem, into a three-dimensional or a multi-dimensional positive metaphor, in this case, not a memory but a metaphor, although it could be a memory, of many, many success stories they have, and they might have years of experience in baseball, a lot to draw from, and to bring it back, what are some things now that you might apply? How would you keep it realistic? And then use some baseball metaphors back to them. You can't always hit a grand slam, right? Sometimes you have to hit a grounder to help somebody else get to the next base, even if you have to sacrifice. Or you might want to hit a double, but you know what you need to do is bunt just to get to first base. So to use that metaphor, and it's helpful too if you know something about the metaphor. If you don't, let them explain it to you. That empowers them even more because they're leading with their ideas. So hopefully this is helpful to you. Again, watch last week on observations, reflections, and connections. Those are standards. But metaphors and memories can really be helpful to people who are either tunnel visioned on the problem or scattered thinking so much that they can't focus on positives that may that they may be able to draw from and to move forward with. Hope that's helpful to you, and I'll see you next time.
At the release date of this video, I am stationed with Research Development and Engineering Command, RDECOM, at Aberdeen Proving Ground, Maryland. Because the majority of our personnel are in this area, I spend most of my time here. I do, however, travel to our distant units based on command priorities and budget. I place these videos on YouTube for broad visibility to Army personnel and their families, but I hope the videos will be helpful to others too. If you are assigned to RDECOM and want to request specific topics by video, training on site or by VTC, or confidential counseling on site or by secure webcam, you can contact me at jeffrey.d.dillard.mil@mail.mil.